when people don't know where they're going, and it doesn't mean that they're not building a good business. You can build a good business, but is it taking you where you want to go? And if you're not, if there's a lack of clarity around a result, there will be a lack of focus in the business. It's hard to marshal the team, right? It's hard to marshal your own attention. It's hard to look at your calendar and say, I am not doing that meeting. I'm doing this meeting. It's like, how do you really focus on those things?
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. You may or may not know, but success leaves a trail of crumbs. When others have gone down the path of growth and seen massive expansion in their business, there's things that they do every single day that got them to that point. And if I look back at my career is just, a series of observations. I try to understand what the successful advisors, what other businesses do, and I try to learn how to implement those traits into my business. In other words, at the end of the day, I'm just a big thief of ideas. I've never really had an original thought in my entire career. I just simply try to look at what other successful people do and then make a point of actually implementing. Now, everyone who's listening to this, we all want to do better, right? We want to create more value for our clients. We want to grow our business. So today, I'm very excited. We have Chris Venn, who's a high growth advisory expert, and he's going to give us the 5 aspects of a high growth advisory business. Now, I had the pleasure of hearing Chris. He was at a conference I recently attended. And as I was sitting there in the audience, I'm like, wow, I've found my guy. I've found somebody who talks my language, who, sees things the way I do. And I'm like, this is the guy for our podcast. Now, what's interesting about Chris is he's the head of advanced marketing for Financial Horizons. And he works with growth-minded advisors, and he helps them move towards success. But the exciting part was he's a former member of the British SAS. He protected some of the wealthiest people in the world, and he was an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. So this is what caught my attention. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy was a bodyguard? This is a guy that we all have to talk to. So he brings, the mindset, the discipline, the perspectives, and coaching that help advisors really create change in their business. He spent over 18 years working with high-performing advisors and firms, both in Canada and the U.S., and he puts together sort of customized programs to help them get to the next success. So once again, I'm excited. Welcome to Turning the Page, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me here. And, when we had a chance to meet in Mexico, I felt the same way. It's like, this is my guy. It's like, where's this guy been? It's like when we finally had a chance to meet each other. So thank you for having me here. I want to offer one small distinction. I was trained by guys from the SAS. I wasn't in it. Like, those guys are magic. So I want to really respect the fact that we got some phenomenal training from some incredible humans, and I was not in the SAS.
Okay, so that's me just elaborating for the purpose of my own publicity in show. So I still think it's
viewership just went up.
Right. No one from the SAS ever trained me. So I got all this on my own. So this is an interesting story, Chris. So tell us your story. How did you get here? Like, this is a very interesting trail to get here.
I would say it's not a typical, that's for sure. First of all, I love the role that I have as head of advanced markets. I get to work with phenomenal advisors every day, helping them drive toward success. And but the start of it goes way back to I had an opportunity to try out to be a part of an executive protection team in Toronto, and they wanted to create a high threat level team, and so they brought a whole pile of people in to try out for that. It was incredibly rigorous as you went through sort of the selection process and the training, and so I made that team, and then we started protecting some really important people. And so we've protected heads of state, we protected some of the most senior business leaders in Canada and the U.S. We have been involved in protecting royalties. So it's kind of cool stuff to do in your 20s, because we're all 10 feet tall and bulletproof at that point anyway. So it was a pretty phenomenal experience. And during that time, the Canadian military started to hear about this team, and they wanted to get access to some of that training because they didn't have those exact tools or skills there. And so they asked a couple of us if we would be reservists. And so I agreed to that. And so I became an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was there for a couple of years. Again, got to do some phenomenal training and do some neat stuff with some of our counterparts in the US. That would be more stories to have over a bourbon sometime as opposed to on this recording.
I hope to have those stories shared over a bourbon.
That's a deal. And then I shifted into business, and the shift to business was not, again, wasn't a super deliberate, here's a path forward. Quite frankly, I was at a spot in my life where I knew I didn't want to do protection anymore. And part of the reason was that I had been stabbed. And I'd been in lots of fights and a couple of knife fights, and this one I lost. And after that, I thought, this might be time to make a shift here, because maybe I'm not bulletproof. Maybe I'm not 10 feet tall.
Certainly I'm not knife proof, we found.
No, definitely not. And at that time, a close friend of mine, his name was John Burns, who was going to start a small consulting firm. And he said, Chris, come with me. And it's like, John, I don't know anything about this stuff. He goes, I know, it'll be great. And
that's perfect.
And so that was how many entrepreneurial, paths started that way. I think a lot did.
A lot.
And so John passed away several years ago from cancer. We lost him, but he was an incredible teacher to me. And so we grew that business and we sold it. And then I went to work for one of my clients, became a partner there. We grew it and sold it. And then I helped start a consulting franchise in the US. So I was a franchisor. And, when I sold my interest there, we were in 26 countries. And so,
wow.
So I've been involved in either starting or joining smaller businesses, growing them, and then moving on as, you evolve along the way. And so about 18 years ago, I was dating someone, and she had been hired as an internal consultant at a large financial services company, where they were bringing consultants to work with their top advisors. And she's, there was some event going on. She said, do you want to meet my leader? And I said, like, absolutely. And they were having a dinner. And so we had dinner, and I met Arlene McComish. And started. And so Arlene said, maybe you can help our team and with some of the things that we're going to do. And so I had a chance to start to do some work with their team of consultants, working with top advisors. And I'm working with Arlene to this day. She's at Financial Horizons as a senior leader.
Right.
And so it's been neat to, go through some iterations there. So along the way, I had my own consulting firm for about 9 years in Canada, and I was a partner in a consulting firm in Boston for 9 years before coming to Financial Horizons. So that's kind of how I got here. And I tell you, when I first met an advisor, and keep in mind, I had built and sold 5 companies and never met a financial advisor.
Oh, wow.
I had never met one.
And sold and never had a financial advisor. Think about how rich you would be if you had met one.
I'd be doing this from a yacht somewhere or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
But so I had my banker, but when I met advisors and I started to understand the impact that they had on the clients, it's like, these are my people. Like, where have they been? And so, all of my work centers entirely around financial advisors. Just how do you drive a business to create the result that advisor wants? And whatever that result is, like, success shows up in a lot of ways, right? It's not like the industry loves to talk about growth. You should grow. It's like, like, growth is good, but growth means more.
Right.
And at some point, like, there's a threshold where you have all the houses, all the cars, all the clothes, and you've done all the trips. It's like, now what? Right. And so at that point, it's you start to see advisors get very reflective and far more deliberate about the kind of work that they're doing. And so, we get to help them move to whatever that next thing's going to be. So it's pretty cool.
I love it. When you first introduced yourself and I was listening to you and being a bodyguard, the first line that went into my head was from Roadhouse, which is, I thought you'd be bigger.
Well, it's interesting. In the true bodyguarding world, those guys are big. Like, they are giant chunks of meat, no necks, and it's just they're going to pull your arms off and beat you with them. In the executive protection world, which is where we were, it's a lot more of the work is in the planning to avoid any issues, and you want to blend in. There are lots of meetings where people thought I was there as a lawyer because a
Right.
major term.
That's
like
where I would go. I'd be like, you look like a lawyer. That's
right. So it's like termination papers are being signed or something like that. And they're afraid that this person is going to lose it and, thump everyone in the room. So it's like, here's our lawyer. And so I deliver the paperwork and they would, or here's legal. They wouldn't say a lawyer, but here's legal. And so you get them to sign the paperwork, but if it goes bad, you would step in and, it's not always size. It's like, I've done a lot of martial arts, and my teacher, who I still work with, or that I work with to this day, I don't know, he's barely 5 feet, and that guy can trash me. And I've been doing this for a long, long time, so it's not all size, but
we all
sometimes that helps.
It helps maybe stop the fight at the beginning, but in my misspent youth, we all knew the doorman to worry about wasn't the two big guys. It was the little guy standing behind the two big guys.
That's right.
That's the guy that's probably going to hurt you. So
yeah,
when you see the little guy, you usually avoid him. So I do remember some things from my misspent youth.
Look at all the advice people get on this call.
Exactly. See, now if you go to a club, the two big guys, don't worry about them. It's the little guy that has his arms crossed. That's the one you always worry about, standing there quietly. But no, it's super interesting. And the fact that you've actually built your own successful businesses, bodes well to credibility on helping and those aspects that it takes to grow a successful advisory business. So now you help, that's where you specialize, and it's great. So you were saying that there's 5 aspects of a high growth advisory business. And maybe you can touch on what those are, and by observation, why those 5 and why other people should pay attention to them.
Yeah, happy to. So let's stay very grounded in a conversation about this, that there are tons of things that impact success for an advisor. And, in the presentation that I was doing when we first met, we had a small amount of time. And so you're trying to look for what are some key things that people can really anchor into, that if they got these ones, things will move for them. So I don't want to get myopic that these are the only things. However, I haven't seen anyone who's crushing it not have them.
See, that's the point.
Yeah,
that's really the point.
And I've had the good fortune to work with hundreds and hundreds of advisors, and some earlier in their career, but some very senior in their career, very large in their operations. And certainly in the US, it was that way. Just the scale is a little bit different there, but there's a handful of things. So the first is clarity, and which might sound like, to the listener, I'd be like, oh, clarity. Okay, I got to know what I want. It's like, no, you have to know what you want. Right. You have to. We will not aimlessly drift into the life or business of our dreams.
Right.
That is not happening.
No, not by accident.
No. And if it happens, it might happen by chance, and in business will be a slim chance. But like, good leadership is about the ability to see the future and then bring the behaviors that are required for that future into the present, right? So it's a bit of time travel to it. Interestingly, that's also the same sequence as anxiety.
True.
It's just different content. Different. With anxiety, we go to the future, we imagine something so horrific that we're able to feel like crap right now. Leadership it has different content to it, and so it becomes empowering. It's when people don't know where they're going. And it doesn't mean that they're not building a good business. You can build a good business, but is it taking you where you want to go? And if you're not, if there's a lack of clarity around a result, there will be a lack of focus in the business. It's hard to marshal the team, right? It's hard to marshal your own attention. It's hard to look at your calendar and say, I am not doing that meeting. I'm doing this meeting. It's like, how do you really focus on those things? So people say, prioritize. It's like, yeah, that's good, but prioritize on what?
On what? Right.
And so when advisors are clear about the life that they want to have and the kind of business that they want to have, they can then start to really drive things toward it. And, we've got this, I didn't really talk about it along the way through the years. I got trained as a therapist. So I'm a board certified hypnotherapist. I ran the second largest coach training company in the world, and I'm a neurolinguistics master practitioner. And the reason I say that is not to try to impress anybody, but to impress upon us that what's going on in our brain really matters. Right. And so when we think about goals or about a future, we've got this little cluster of cells in our brain called the reticular activating system. It's a part of the brain that looks for what you're looking for. So if you buy a new car, and you've been through this, right? You buy a new car, and then suddenly you see that car all over the place.
Yeah, then all of a sudden everybody's driving an Acura. So
yeah, they all have it, right? That's because the brain has marked that now as being important, so it can see it everywhere. But all those cars were there beforehand, and so it's the same when we set goals in our business or we tighten up on a niche that we're going to pursue or whatever. Those people are there. We don't see them though because our brain's not marking them. Well, if you haven't clarified what you want the future to look like, it's very difficult for your brain to use its magical powers to, recognize, ooh, that contributes to that. And there's the kind of person that we want to hire. And that's the kind of client that we want to bring on, or that's the MGA partner, or that's the carrier that I want to work with, or whatever it is.
Right.
It can't mark those without that clarity. So the clarity is huge.
I love that.
It kind of sounds boring.
No, but it's true. As they said in Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any path will do.
Absolutely.
When you know exactly the path that you want, all your decisions revolve around sort of the clarity of what you're looking for in the future. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and I know you've had these conversations with people. It's like, I know you have. It's like people have to know where they're going, but once they're clear, it's like it gets exciting because now you start to see, all that energy and activity starts to really harness around what they're actually after. So clarity is the first. The second one is relevance. So the industry loves to talk about being different. It's like, I can stand on my head and be different. It's like, this is about being relevant. So different doesn't cut it. And in order to be relevant, the advisor really does need to make a commitment to a niche. Now, I often, I'll hear people sort of push back on that idea. It's like, well, I don't want to limit who I can sell to. It's like, no, we're not talking about sales. We're talking about marketing.
Right.
For sales, that's about when you receive checks. So we graciously accept all inbound checks for appropriate work. Got it.
Right.
Marketing is about writing checks. And so when you're going to spend time, money, attention, relationships, space, whatever, you can't spend it on everyone. You can't spend it on 44 million Canadians.
Right.
But you could spend it on 400 of exactly the right people you want to spend all your time with. And so it's not that you're not allowed to sell to others, but your message needs to be relevant to a really specific group of people so that when they hear you talking, it's like, he's talking to me. Like it should be, the marketing should be able to be so precise that you're speaking the voice that's in their head already. It's like, oh, this person gets me. And so I encourage advisors to really think about, who's the niche that they're working with right now? And how do I make sure that what I'm doing is relevant to them? Not that I think it's a good idea, not that other people think it's a good idea. That's relevant to them.
Right. Well, if you read any books about disruption and industries that have been disrupted, what they will always say to you is you were too focused on the competition. You weren't focused enough on staying relevant to who your customer is.
Yeah.
And so your biggest enemy is always irrelevance. That's the worst enemy. It's not whether, somebody else is getting into your space. It's whether your clients actually think you're relevant to helping them solve your problem. So I totally identify with that.
There's almost a tripwire there in conversations with clients because people are, especially with prospects, because prospects will say, well, tell me how you're different. It's like, it's a tripwire and it's dangerous because everyone says the same thing. Everyone says, well, I really care about my clients. I have a great team. We're smart people. We have a good process and a great product shelf. No one's saying it's like, don't really care about my clients. My team sucks.
Right.
We're stupid. I know. It's like, nobody's saying that.
So sell very much.
Right. So as soon as you answer that question, you immediately become identical to all other advisors.
Right.
And so here's a secret that I would encourage our listeners to use is that when somebody asks you how you're different, just say, you know what, let me tell you about the difference I create in my clients' lives.
I like it.
And speak to that because that's actually what they're asking.
Right.
They don't really have a checklist of, how are you different? How's this one different? It's like, they want to know what difference you're going to create for me. What's going to happen there? And it's a way to just elevate right out of the conversation that everyone else is in and actually show your relevance to that niche.
Yeah, I love it. And no truer words have ever been spoken. Absolutely. I love that. You can use that line over and over again.
Absolutely, you can. Absolutely.
One of the hardest things to do is to take strategy, which is theory, and move it into action, which is execution. And this is what I talk to advisors literally about every single day, is how do you take that next big idea and actually make it happen? So if you want to chat about your next big idea and how to turn your strategy into action, go to the link and you can schedule a virtual coffee with me. And I do these virtual coffees all the time. And it's great to really talk about strategy and what you need to do to actually make it come true. So if you want to have a little chat, just go to the show notes. There's a link there, hit the link, and happy to schedule a call and have a little chat.
The third one is skill, which sounds like a duh answer. It's like, yeah, no kidding. You have to be good at it, but you actually have to be good at it. And when I say that, it's, if 99.9% were good enough, 12 newborns would be given to the wrong parents every day. Okay, so it's like there are certain things,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
there are certain things where you need to be 100%. So not everything, but there are things where you need to be 100%. And so part of that is dictated by regulation. Part of that is dictated by the kinds of clients that you're dealing with. And part of it is dictated by the kinds of solutions that you're bringing to the table. So people, I'll see some advisors like, I want to move up market. It's like, cool. What kind of services would you provide? This and this and this. Good. What do you know about that?
Yeah.
I'm still learning there. It's like, cool. Let's do some of that learning first. Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate the desire to, they want to push their business ahead and just make sure that you are, I think about the executive protection stuff. That job was 99% boredom and 1% panic.
Right. I like that. Boredom, panic.
That's it. It's like, it's like I'm this highly trained machine standing in an alley in the middle of the night in the pouring rain to make sure no one comes out of a manhole. It's like, this is boring. But in the 1% moment, you have to be perfect.
Right. And
so we have to think about what are our 1% moments as advisors. So I hold that setting goals and targets and vision is a 1% moment. Like you need to be on it and have it clear, because if you're off, God forbid you get it. Right. It's like, oh, well, this isn't what I wanted. I did all this work for all these years.
and somewhere else. Yeah.
Like rats. The second is a 1% activity is the marketing. How are you telegraphing what it's going to be like working with you?
Right.
Which is what marketing is. Like marketing is designed to get people to move closer to you. And people think that, people go to my website to learn about me. No, they don't. They go to your website to find out if you know about them.
Exactly. How can you solve my problem?
Yeah. So does this person understand people like me? That's what they want to know. Not, what's their process? And the process is good, but is the process tuned for people like this?
Right.
So the marketing needs to be on the mark. Prospect meetings, sales meetings should be repeatable. If it's not repeat, look, if you can't repeat it, you can't improve it. And I don't care if you've been doing it for 30 years. It's like, I respect it. I respect that you've been through it a ton of times, but your structure should stay consistent so that you can say, it always seems to like get mushy around this part of the conversation, or this part doesn't land, and you tune it and you tune it. And that's what pros do. Right. And because look, you and I have both seen advisors that have been in the business for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. And they say, I got 30 years experience. But when you look at it, you see, they've got 1 year that they repeated 29 more times.
Absolutely. Right. They haven't improved. They're doing the same presentation.
Yeah.
Without improvement.
Without improvement,
by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm okay if you keep doing the same things, just keep tuning it, because like the thing that's cool is, and that's interesting, is from a distance, an advisor in their first year in this business looks like they're doing the same things as a top producing advisor on the planet. Right. I'm doing some marketing. I'm getting out to meet people. I'm trying to get a meeting. We're going to identify some needs. I'm going to present a solution. I'm going to paper it. We're going to close it. We're going to service it. Same stuff.
Right.
All the nuance is where this business is won or lost. It's in all the details. And details can seem boring, especially to entrepreneurs. It's like we like big picture. What are we going to do? What's the big, bold move? It's like, no, say this like that. And I do. And it's like, ooh, there's something different happens there. So it's like so when we talk about skill, it's not about advisors are unskilled. Advisors are super skilled. And it's like, and you've got to keep refining and refining and refining so that, your goals are tight, your marketing is tight, your sales meetings are tight where you're making those promises. And then the execution of that promise is, it's got to be delivered beautifully.
Yeah. And the basic principle, and I know I've had this on the show before, is Kaizen. And so you're in the martial arts.
Yeah. Right.
Kaizen is constant, continual improvement. And there's no such thing as stagnation. You always, and even if it's, to your point, very minor adjustments, it only has to be minor adjustments, just little improvements. After 2 to 3 years, you have completely changed what you started at. And it's, to your point, perfect. They talk about Michael Jordan doing jump shots, 400, 300 in a row, and just doing the same thing over and over again. It's just constant, continual improvement. So once again, that really resonates.
And it's boring, and we don't want to do it. Like, and right?
It's like fun. Yeah.
No, it's like give me the new shiny toy to work on, but it's like, nope, do it again. And it's like the idea of you don't practice the thing until you can get it right. You practice it until you can't get it wrong.
I like that. There's another line I'm going to steal from you. See, I've already stole a few. This is going to be a great show. I'm going to re-listen so I can steal some of your lines.
But when people think about that, right? It's like, hey, I got it right. Good. You just started. Now do it again until you can do that fatigued or not on your best day or when you're under pressure or like keep training it until you can't get it wrong. Because the idea is we don't rise to the occasion. We sink to the level of our conditioning. So we've got to, so where's that bar?
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
And to go after that stuff means you have to put yourself in all these uncomfortable situations, and nobody wants to do that just for practice. So
no, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of focus. And this is also why people need coaches. That's what coaches make you do. And no matter what the discipline, whether it's athletics, whether it's business, whether it's sales, whether it's being a musician, it's practice, unconscious competence. You've probably heard that a lot, certainly in both martial arts and the military, unconscious competence, so that you react to something without even thinking that you're reacting.
Yeah. You don't even have to think. So it leaves like brain cycles available for other things.
Yeah,
you can. You're not pulled into. It's like driving a stick shift car for the first time. It's like now it's like you're not even thinking about driving.
Well, exactly. And for guys like me, I need all the capacity I can get. So the more conscious competence, the better.
Well, let's talk about capacity for a second then.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you always hear, right? I don't have the capacity. I'm too busy. I got no time. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we have, people say, there's not enough time. Time is scarce. Well, best I can see, it seems to go on for quite a while. So there's a lot that's there. The question is, how are we using it? And people talk about managing time. And that's one of their challenges is that you cannot manage time. You can manage energy level, you can manage focus or attention, and you can manage your activity. Those are the only things you can really manage in yourself. You can manage other people, I get it. But
you can try.
Yeah, well, fair. But time is not a thing that's very easy to bend to our will. So one of the questions that's important for advisors to be asking themselves constantly is, what is the highest and best use of my time? Right. Is this an activity? There's these two questions that if they sit in your head regularly, they help a lot. One is this moving me toward the future that I want or not? Is this increasing my energy or decreasing it? And if it's moving you toward the future you want and it's increasing your energy, you're in your sweet spot. Right. And if it's not doing both of those, like we have admin. I got it.
Sure.
Right. There's an expense report to be done. There's, whatever. So there's admin that's got to be done or things that we're not going to be in that state all the time. But what's the highest and best use of our time, and how do we stay in that space as much as possible? How do we triple down on strengths, and so that we are in our sweet spot and hire out the rest? And if people are nervous about hiring someone, it's maybe you're looking at bringing someone on for the very first time, or you've had someone part-time and you want to bring somebody on full-time and you're nervous. It's if you're disciplined about how you use the time that opens up, that gift of time will create dramatic results over and over and over. So capacity is huge.
Yeah, I can attest to that. That's certainly one thing that I am very, very, very diligent about is my time and where it is spent. And a great line that I heard and I was told is every time you do something you hate, you're depriving somebody else of doing something they love. And since there's very little things that I like to do, I like to spread the capitalism, so to say, and getting everybody else to do something, all the things that I hate doing, so that I can focus on the things I'm good at and the things I enjoy doing. So, it certainly resonates.
I love that. I get that. Look, you don't create the results you've created, Chris, without being connected to that. So it's like you get it. And when advisors really get judicious about how they apply their time and spend more and more of their business day actually doing stuff that actually creates the results, it's huge. Because look, there's a lot of stuff we could do that looks just like sales without actually producing a sales result.
Well, I was going to say, without actually doing the work that it actually takes. And you also hit on one note that I certainly appreciate, which is about energy, right? If you're doing high energy activities, things that give you energy, you love doing that, versus low energy things you hate doing, you can always tell what kind of activities you had at the end of the day. If you end the day, you're energized, you want to keep going, that's a great day. If you end the day with, I need a scotch, that's
that's a different day.
Totally different type of day. Right? And so, every day you can look yourself in the mirror and ask, did I have a great day? And I didn't. And what do you do on your great days? And what do you do on your bad days? And you can decide which activities really pump you up and make you, want to do the things you want to do.
This is really important, Chris. It's like, I really agree with you on this, because like a high energy level, it's a fundamental prerequisite to high levels of success. Like we don't see Olympic athletes walking up to the line. Well, I guess they'll give it a shot. Like they're amped, right? And to ensure we have a high energy level, the downside of that is you have to eat right. You can't be partying every night. You have to be getting the sleep. You have to be drinking enough water. Like all the stuff that sounds like, oh, well, those are health issues. It's like, yeah, like, look, that's where your energy comes from. So it's for an advisor who's not attentive to their energy level, their health levels, who aren't working out, it's like, there's no indictment around that. What I do know is that they're missing opportunity. And if they feel like they're not getting to where they want to get to fast enough, one of the best things they can do is hit the gym. Right. It's like, and increase that energy. And some people have a naturally high energy level and they frustrate me because I don't. I get up early every morning and I work through a process that gets my energy up and set to be able to do the things I want to do. And not because I want to, it just gets me a better result.
No. And the other one that I'll add to that is take lots of time off. I know coming from a family of workaholics, where they were very proud to tell you how long and worked and they never took time off. The only thing that really got them was death. Whereas, if you, and I forget where I read this, but all great innovations come after an extended period of time off. Your brain gets to relax and really focus on, to your point, that high energy level. So, I think that's also a key part. You got to stay fit and you got to take lots of time off for yourself so that you can actually focus.
Yep. And you don't have to stay fit because you want to be fit. Just stay fit because you want to have the goals that you want to have. Like it's for that.
It never hurts.
It doesn't hurt.
These are all the things that people do right. Now, is there things that would add to this on advisors? What do they do wrong? Where do you see some of the things? Like if I had to give advice and say, these are the 3 things not to do, what would those 3 things be?
That's a good question. So one of the things I see for sure is that, I hold an advisor's number one skill is their skill or ability to be confident. You can know everything. You can be connected to everyone, but if you're not feeling the confidence to step out and have those conversations and connect with those people, that you're not going to see the results that you want. And it's almost like we're squandering that capability.
Right.
And so one is, when I see advisors getting into kind of a cycle of behavior that erodes their confidence, it's that can be really tough, and it's a great way to shut down results.
Right. No, makes sense.
So that's one. The Another would be, so this is not the definitive list of three, by the way, but these are three that are coming to mind.
Three that come to mind. That's all I'm looking for.
Cool. The second would be to be very scattered in what they're trying to take on. I'm trying to take on everything. When we're trying to take on growth in every way, in every direction, all at once, is very difficult to do that. And our minds aren't really wired up that way. And even when someone says, well, I deal with ADHD, so my mind jumps and jumps and jumps. Yeah, but it can jump a lot down a path.
I was gonna say, right? And it doesn't have to be this way. It could be this
way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so there are ways to harness that, but when they start to push a lot of different directions, that's tough. I think what would be a good third that gets in their way is when they keep changing plan.
Right.
I got to start down this.
That clarity. They don't have clarity, so they change their plan all the time.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try this, or now I'm gonna try that, and I'm all about experiment with things. Like go run the experiment, go and test, but test toward a specific reason. You're not running experiments for the heck of it. It's oftentimes, especially as entrepreneurs, when we get to a spot where we're starting to create kind of normal, predictable results and they're good, it's a very boring time.
Right.
And that's a time where what we need to be doing is fine-tuning those processes so it's repeatable and gets better and better. This is that evolution we were talking about earlier. What tends to happen is we get bored. So we go and install something new and create some chaos, but it's exciting, and we're going to deploy a new system or do whatever it is. And then we get that solved, and then it starts to get back to sort of that normal performance again.
Right.
And I see many advisors stay in this loop of normal to chaos, to chaos, as opposed to going from normal to kind of getting to a spot where they're creating like some really results, and then getting to a spot where they are in just a powerful state. Like just about every time they meet someone, the person says yes. They have lots of opportunities. Like they just get to that spot where they're crushing it over and over. And if we don't do all that fine tuning along the way, we miss that opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly going back to the Kaizen is, are you constantly continually improve it? Small improvements, not, throw the whole thing out and start over. And I've seen that.
Although it's exciting.
Well, it's exciting for a while, but it can also be the downward spiral. People jump around far too much.
Yeah.
So, finally, you work with some of the, highest performers in our industry, right across this great nation of ours. You work with people in the United States. So where do you see the business going in the next 3 to 5 years? And how would people prepare for that?
Those are two good questions. Regulation is one that's in our face all the time. It has morphed from being a smattering of folks across the country to becoming its own industry. Like regulation's an industry in Canada, and it draws an incredible amount of energy and attention from advisors. And so I think that creates a major challenge for advisors, because I'm not against regulation. I'm not against ensuring the industry is working in the best interest of the clients. I think that's great. But when there's so much onerous overhead in order to actually perform that, and then more importantly, probably prove it, right? That's tough. And so I think we're going to see more, but not less.
Yeah.
And how do we mitigate? I think that the companies that advisors partner with, whether it's a direct carrier or through an MGA, I think the support and capability around regulation is going to be a huge one. So look for partnership, look for good help there, so that regulation doesn't own you. Let it serve clients. That's good. And lead into it. It's like be forward leaning on it. It's not like, well, client, I'm going to make you sign this because they're finally requiring us to do this. Like, no, I'm happy to have you sign this because I have nothing to worry about here.
Right.
And
part of the process.
Yeah.
So
I think I was going to say, I think a second one is, the pandemic caused people to change how they do things.
Right.
And one thing we saw, and we've seen through some interesting data, is sort of the shift toward DIY became increased because people realized, and probably rightly, that no one is coming to save you.
Right.
And so,
as we found out,
right.
found out the hard way.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that one, but it's like no one is coming to save you. And so there's a shift that happened where clients want advisors to work with them more so than for them.
Right.
And
I think that's a good descriptor. Yeah.
Especially on the planning side of things, where, a client that historically may have gone to a financial advisor, here's all my info, do your fact find, generate a plan. Thank you very much. I'll do my best to go follow that. Now they're wanting to be in the conversation with the advisor about, okay, so stage one, let's run budget together. And so we're seeing this move from the plan being this big sort of this big single heavy event to becoming almost more like TikTok moments where they're having a series of smaller meetings with their advisor where they do get the dopamine hit. They do get the, I've got an issue, we work through it, we figure it out, I've got a plan. Hey, I feel great, dopamine in my brain. And so they want to come back and do the next piece and do the next piece. So instead of these big, heavy plans happening, we're seeing this shift toward smaller, sort of low friction planning show up where the client definitely wants to be involved.
Well, I think, to that point, and also technology, is making that so much easier to deliver. Before it was an event to go see your financial advisor.
Yes.
Car, you got to get, if you have kids, you got to get a babysitter. You got to go now. You can turn on the computer and have a 20-minute call on this topic or that topic or the other topic. So that all of a sudden availability of advice at a fingertip has changed the way that we give advice to clients. And I think that is only going to accelerate as we move forward.
Absolutely.
There's still a place for face-to-face, don't get me wrong. And I know the old timers always get on me when I say use technology. Doesn't replace face-to-face. I'm never suggesting that, but I think it supplements the interaction that we have with clients.
Absolutely. And especially where there's already a relationship, when you've already spent some time, I always think about atoms versus bits. Right. It's like sometimes we're together in atoms, sometimes we're together in bits. And so when you've spent time with someone and you already have a sense of kind of what they're like, it becomes really easy to do a digital meeting, have a point of connection, solve a thing, talk about a thing, and still feel connection.
Right.
But if every single interaction is like that, it's tough to get the same kind of connection as being there with a person in real life. And, is there money that's being left on the table because we're not there physically? I don't know. I don't think there's any data to support it one way or another, but it's we're in a hybrid world, and so lean into it.
We have to adapt. So this has been fantastic. So if you follow the show, you know that there's my rapid fire at the end. So I have 3 questions that I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And I want you to really answer like the first thing that pops in your mind. So the first thing is, what are you passionate about?
I have a cattle ranch, and I'm super passionate about building this ranch for my 2 little kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we're trying to build something for the future for them. And as much as I totally love helping advisors get the success that they want, I'm super passionate about this ranch.
I love it, especially since we were talking before. My dad was a cowboy, and he said a good way to never have any money is to buy cows. So I love
Don't say that.
I love your passion. At least you have passion. Second question, what is your most memorable client interaction? One time where you can say, wow, this made a difference.
So I'm not going to give too much detail on this, but there was an advisor that I worked with that was dealing with a very difficult family situation. And so there was a succession issue, there was a family issue, there were children involved, and it was tough. And it was tough for the advisor day to day. And I did very, very little tangibly to help that advisor. But I was there with him while he was figuring it out. And I remember at the end of that, there was a big hug and a big cry that we both had over what had been arrived at, and the fact that we weren't just able to somehow find a solution to it, but he found harmony in it for his family and for his business. And I tell you, we were just there at the end of it, saying a goodbye, and had this long hug and cry together that has permanently changed our relationship. And I saw him very recently, and he's very, very near and dear to my heart. So just seeing that kind of resolution, that's impacted me tremendously.
I love it. And you see, it comes back to you right now. And the last thing is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It was probably a very clear instruction to be better. And it wasn't a very positive moment when I got that advice. But someone who matters very much to me looked me straight in the face and said, you need to be better. And at the time it hurt. And on reflection afterwards, I kind of realized that's my belief actually now about why we're here. So whether a person subscribes to creation or the Big Bang, I always have this thought of so if you think Big Bang, infinitely dense singularities floating out in space billions of years ago, or floating out of nothing billions of years ago, expands into a million years of fire, creates a galaxy, creates, the planets that we evolve, and here we are today. I always had this thought of, so what was that thing thinking just before it did that? And I hold that as some version of, I want there to be more than there was a moment ago. Same thing in religious traditions, a deity creates.
Right.
What was it thinking before it did that? I want there to be more. I think our fundamental evolutionary impulse is to be more than we were a minute ago. And every time we're pushing to do that, we feel like we're on track. And so be better is the best piece of advice I think has ever gotten.
That is a great piece of advice. And I think everyone should take that one to heart. So thank you, Chris. This has been awesome. As I said, April, you go on for hours, but maybe I'll just get you back on the show another time. Just
love to.
For the sake of my audience, I think this was great. Talking about what makes high performers high performing, the 5 things that they should focus on, the things they have to overcome, and where we're going to go into the business. So this has been a great talk. Chris, anything to add for our audience before we let them go?
I just so honor the work that advisors do. It just, every time I see advisors who are taking great care of their clients, it is inspiring to see it. And you think about the ripple effect that creates for their clients. It's phenomenal. It goes on for generations. It touches communities. And so I just want to honor and respect the heck out of the work that everyone listening does, to the work that you do, Chris, and the fact that you host a podcast like this to support advisors and continue to drive forward.
Well, thank you. It's an industry that I love, and I want to continue to give back. So thank you so much, Chris Venn, here on High Performance. And if anyone wanted to follow up, how would they do that?
I think probably LinkedIn's the easiest way. Just do a quick search for Chris Venn. You'll find me there, and I would love to connect.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show, Chris.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.